when I look in the mirror and I hated the look.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is bullshit. I prepped all this videos. I look like crap.
What's up guys and welcome. You are watching Fazi Fitness. So let's start this video with Samson Dauda, who appeared on the bodybuilding and the bollocks for the very first time since this past Olympia weekend, sharing his entire experience of the prep as well as the Olympia weekend with his wife Marlena.
Underdog story is a big one. Like watching somebody come from doing shoulder press handstands in a hotel room because they're in quarantine and not qualifying to all of a sudden 4 or 5 years later becoming the best in the world.
So word for word referenced here. That makes you think, can Samson's story and his rise to the top, can that be any more dramatic than this one? So how many of you guys remember Samson doing those push-ups in the hotel room back in 2020, the COVID times, because he had to quarantine and he had no access to the hotel gym? If I'm not mistaken, that was Monsters in Pro in Korea, and Samson Dauda did not win that one. So from that to 4 years later, winning the biggest bodybuilding show in the world, that I have to say is just so damn motivating, so inspirational, and just absolutely ethereal.
Have I got this? Have I won? Have I not got this? And I remember he says, okay, because this is the part that really got me.
Yeah.
He said, okay, guys, who do you have? And the whole crowd started chanting. And I looked over and I'm like, I've never heard that happen before.
Yeah.
Not for the Olympia. I've never heard that happen like everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm looking over going, you know what? It doesn't really matter. Right now, right here at this spot, hearing that, it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
And honestly, that was really what it felt like. It just felt like, you know what? Yeah, I'm happy. It doesn't matter.
So this interview of Samson Dauda, that might be one of the most in-depth experience shared by any Miss Olympia, and what he went through throughout the prep, and not just the good moments, but also those moments in which Samson Dauda felt so vulnerable, and he nearly did not want to believe what his wife was telling him, and not to mention what she was asking him to do.
I look small, I look flat. And I lost my crap. I was like, this sucks. I'm
like, spiraling out of control.
Yep. I'm like, and it was just getting worse and worse. I'm only to sit my ass down and say, shut up and stop and just pick it.
So their entire strategy, going for France, just 2 weeks prior to this year's Miss Olympia, that was literally a masterstroke when it comes to making that calculation on how to pick Samson Dauda for the Olympia weekend, and it damn well worked.
How much carbs does it take to get you ready for a show, and what's undercutting and what's just right? So when we did in France, we picked up a lot of information about just how much we need at this state of where our body is at right now to fill me up for the show.
And one of the biggest differences between Samson's prep with his former coach Milos Sarcev and with his wife, that was the difference in the amount of carbs that Samson was getting, not only throughout the prep, but the days leading into the show as well. Because we all know Milos Sarcev is very famous for bringing his guys full, and that formula just did not work with Samson Dauda during that entire time with Milos.
It's always seemed to give me too much carbs to try to fill me out. And when you do that, especially over a long period, it's almost like if you start carbing up, say you start carbing up on Wednesday, which some guys do. Yeah. By the time it gets to Friday, that carbs, I'm already so over full that now you're spilling over.
So that particular moment where Samson Dauda talks about losing his cool when he looked at himself in the mirror, that is a perfect description of the prep brain. I am sure some of you guys who have competed in the past, they can relate to this one.
You cannot trust your mindset on the day of the show. Honestly, I could have blown it on Friday.
Yeah.
Because, oh my God, at one point on Friday, I think it was Friday afternoon, I got up, I had a nap, and I woke up and I looked in the mirror and I hated the look. Yeah. And I was like, oh, this is bullshit. I prepped all this videos. I look like crap. I look small. I look flat. Listen to whatever she said. Don't listen. So when she was even telling me at first, I was already like, no, I'm not listening to you. You don't know what you're talking about. You're just saying that. You're just saying that. And then it got a moment where I was like, I went to the mirror in the bathroom. I went down, put my head down, and I felt like I was going to cry. Yeah. And I just stopped for a minute going, remember we talked about this exact moment.
Now, when you take a picture, especially when you are very close to the show, in your own mind, that looks so awful. And then you decide not to post it. But weeks later, after the show is over, that same picture looks so impressive That is the same thing that happened to Samson Dauda as well. And props to his wife, and also his coach, for not breaking under the pressure, and making sure that Samson Dauda followed that protocol to the dot. So personally, I think that was a great discussion between Samson Dauda and all these other guys. And I think you guys will also be thrilled to listen to this entire discussion.
Did you carb load heavy at all for Friday, or did you kind of come in like moderately?
No.
So one of the biggest storylines going into this year's Classic Physique Miss Olympia, that was Stephane winning in Portugal Pro, and that too in such a dominating manner, beating a guy like Wahid Badepi, who was top 9 in the world from last year's Miss Olympia. That was such an amazing performance, and he did show up looking so impressive with his coach Patrick Tour. So all of us were expecting that he is gonna place at least top 10 at his Classic Physique Olympia debut. But then that announcement came that he is no longer gonna stay in the class, in the division, where there is just literally zero room for improvements. He was just fighting his body all this time to make that weight cutoff, and he made that bold decision of making that transition into the men's open bodybuilding so that he can utilize all this time to get bigger and to get better and to put on some solid size. And that right here is the first look during his first proper and real off season, when Stephane is allowed to eat like an open guy, like a proper bodybuilder, as there is no fear of getting down to a certain body weight now. So this is precisely the biggest reason why so many of us kept on saying that Stephane should move to men's open. And this right here is the biggest Stephane we have ever seen, and the way his body is responding to more food. I think we might be looking at his men's open bodybuilding debut by the end of 2025. Now his front and his side shots, they are his biggest runs. The back, however, needed more work. So with a year of solid growth phase, Stephane will be ready to test himself against the real freaks. So he himself has one of the best genetics in the modern bodybuilding, with those crazy round muscle bellies and such insane aesthetics. And he can get in a crazy good condition as well, especially with a coach like Patrick Tour. So next up is the physique update of Mike Sommerfeld. And he is the man to beat in 2025 in Classic, based on his performance at this year's Miss Olympia. And other than the year 2019, when Chris Bumstead beat Breon Ansley by just 1 point, and he won his first ever Miss Olympia, Mike Sommerfeld this year was the only athlete who pushed Chris Bumstead so damn hard that some of the judges, they actually had him winning the Olympia. And this was the very first time since 2019 where C-Bum did not get a perfect score. And I have to say Mike deserves all the credit, all the recognition and all the respect, as he 100% deserves that, which honestly he just did not get after placing top 5 in 2022. So going from 8th all the way to 2nd this year, that was one of the most impressive things that we witnessed at this year's Olympia stage. So you look at some of these pictures of Mike Sommerfeld in the rebound phase, and only one question comes to your mind, because the kind of size that he is carrying right now. And as a short guy, you just wonder, how the hell does he make that weight cutoff for Classic Physique? Just take a look at that most muscular shot. It gives you open bodybuilding vibes. But this is the time to shine for Mike. So this Classic Physique division has been so unpredictable, especially in this last whole 1 year, with Wesley dropping down to 8th after winning both the Arnolds this year. So you just do not know what's gonna happen in 2025. But I have to say it is gonna be one of those years, like 1998, where the Olympia title was vacant. Or maybe like 2019. So hopefully we will see all these guys at their all-time best, fighting for that top spot. So Wesley must have been one of the most disappointing guys after this year's Classic Physique Miss Olympia. So what really went wrong for him? Because the man really thought that this was his personal best. And by looking at these comparison pictures from the Arnold, Ohio versus the Olympia this year, I have to kinda agree with his response after getting 8th at this year's Miss Olympia, that the Arnold Classic and the Olympia, they are judged a bit differently. And maybe he did not deserve to win these Arnold Classic titles either. I mean, just take a look at this comparison of his back double biceps which from waist down is his weakest pose because of his weak hamstrings and the glutes. And yes, I know he might be positioning his feet a bit differently, a bit more closely at the Olympia this year. But just look at the difference between adductors at the Arnold versus the Olympia. I have to say he did make some solid improvements. So looking at that front double biceps comparison, he looks more or less the same in both these pictures. Maybe a bit more fuller at the Arnold. But if him having a wider waist, that was the main reason for him getting 8th, how come he won both the Arnolds just a few months back with that same waistline, especially in comparison to his fellow competitors? I do think Wesley peaked too early for this year's Miss Olympia. He was peeled at about 8 weeks out of this year's Miss Olympia, and maybe in person, he looked a bit different compared to these pictures. So the judges gave him very mixed signals in both these shows, at the Arnold as well as the Olympia. So what is gonna happen if Wesley does this year's Arnold, which is happening in March? So hit the thumbs up button if you liked the video, and smash the subscribe button if you wanna come back for more. Thanks for watching.